I'm with Wissam Salah from Bedouins Without Borders. Now, Wissam, what is Bedouins Without Borders?
It's a non-for-profit Palestinian organization established in 2015 by a group of male and female Bedouin activists to focus on the needs and necessities of the Bedouin communities in the West Bank, Naqab and Gaza.
Are you Bedouin yourself?
Yes, I am. I am from a Ta'amra tribe, which is one of the largest Bedouin tribes in the West Bank.
And when were you started and why were you started?
We started because, we come from a non-for-profit background. We worked with non-for-profits for a while, most of us. And we noticed 7 or 8 years ago, there is no addressing to the true Bedouin community's needs and, like I said, necessities. And there is no understanding of the Bedouin culture and element in the Palestinian context. So we saw that we need to make a body that focuses on this truly marginalized group of people that faces a lot of imminent problems as we speak. And that's how we started. We started with this intention of, giving voice to the Bedouin communities. And that's what Bedouins Without Borders is as a platform, is a place where Bedouins can say what they want and express what's really happening to them.
What is a Bedouin?
A Bedouin, well, Wikipedia says it has a definition for Bedouins, but we have a different definition. Anyway, start with, Wikipedia says nomadic tribes or groups of people or communities that travel in the desert and so on. That's a definition, and it's maybe closer to the social understanding of, nomadic ways of life. Yet we don't see Bedouins, especially in the past 200 or 300 years, in a nomadic state. They have a seasonal movement, or so we can say it's semi-nomadic, and they move within their own territories. So they have their tribal lands and borders, and each tribe, they know their borders, and they move within that borderline. So it's not a group of people that just wander around. They actually move from like a summer resident to a winter resident and back and forth. I don't think that classifies as nomadic, in my opinion. But this is open for discussion. Bedouins are a group of people that live in the desert that carry a distinctive culture and heritage. Okay, related to the Arab Peninsula. We come from ancestry that goes back to Yemen and to southern parts of Saudi Arabia. Moved through the thousands of years, we moved to this area. Looking for grazing areas, moving away from drought and so on. So our ancestry tribe is still in Saudi Arabia. So, for example, my tribe relates to a tribe in Saudi Arabia. We're not connected politically, but we are connected in kinship. So we do sometimes visit and speak in their events if it happens. A Bedouin is, there are other Arabic tribes that are not Bedouins, so just to distinguish. They come from maybe a farming culture and a more settled and, again, farming culture. We come from a shepherding culture, so that's a different one. I see Bedouins just like in a resemblance, okay? Not the same, but like you have a cowboy culture in the States, where they shepherd cows, that sense, okay? So they have their distinctive culture. They have a culture. When you say Texas or cowboys, yes, they do have these certain culture, dress, and even if you're a doctor and you're a Texan or a cowboy, you will have that accent and you have that way of presenting yourself, and that culture you will hold dear to yourself. Bedouins do the same thing. Now they are part of this society. They're settling down for many reasons. Some are forced and some are, as normal civilization is moving to settle. But they hold strongly to their beliefs and culture, and that's something we see through the years.
Do Bedouins still live in tents?
Some Bedouins live in tents, very few. Most have tents, though. See that we have a problem. Our grazing area is mainly we live in the desert, basically. And when you talk about historical Palestine, in that sense, when Palestine and Israel, now you're looking at over close to 60% of the area is desert. And that's where the Bedouins live, okay? So now with the two-state solution and things that are happening on the ground, most of Area C is a desert. In the West Bank, for example, in Gaza, it's a desert. And Bedouins are not allowed to build their tents or to move their herds in that area, which was normally, that's where you take your sheep and goats, and that's where you go. If you go back a little bit, after the 1967 control over the West Bank, Israel banned all movement in the desert, basically. So you were not allowed to move. It was all considered a training zone for the army. So all the grazing areas, all the shepherds moved to the cities, and that kind of pushed a lot of Bedouin tribes and communities closer to cities, and forced them, in a sense, to settle and look for other alternative, economic employment or jobs. But yeah, that was part of it. That was a big part of why Bedouins, you won't see a lot of tents now. There are some. Beit al-Sha'ar. Beit al-Sha'ar is the Bedouin tent. So it's not just a tent. It's called Beit al-Sha'ar. Beit al-Sha'ar is a principle, not only a tent, okay? A lot of our culture is based on this symbol of Beit al-Sha'ar, or the Bedouin tent. How it's made, why it's made, how it's open or not to guests and so on. I mean, where it has walls or not. Beit al-Sha'ar contributes a lot to the anthropology of the Bedouins now. It's our culture. It's why we're open to guests, why we have these safety codes when somebody comes in. We have this tribal law that's based on this open tent principle, okay? So you live in an open space, you expect wanderers to come around at any minute, so you'll have a culture based on that principles. Plus, you move too in areas where nobody is residing, and you expect people to take care of you and to make sure you're safe and so on. So yes, this a lot of the culture is based on this intangible element of the tent itself, okay, and it factors a lot in the Bedouin culture. Some still do it. I have my grandparents' Beit Sha'ar or tent is stored, so I cannot. It's very hard to, and plus there's no area to put it in. So I live in a house, but I still have that tent available. It's part of my identity, I guess. It's and a lot of people, a lot of Bedouins, friends of mine, and a lot of tribes will build brick home and have that tent behind it. Okay, they will still build that tent behind it because that's where we feel comfortable. That's closer to our culture. We don't like closed doors. We like open spaces, and that tent is our open spaces. You just open and you see everything in front of you.
Are Bedouins just found here in the Middle East, or can you find Bedouins all over the world?
All over the world, Bedouins. But you don't call them Bedouins. You might call them, in Tibet they have a different name. In Kazakhstan they have a different name. Australia, they probably have something too there, but in the Moroccan Sahara, you'll see Tawarik or tribal, they're desert dwellers. They call them desert dwellers, okay. They don't call themselves Bedouins. It's the same culture. It's the same thing. Actually, even a lot of common law is the same between here and Northern Africa when it comes to tribal desert tribes. So, in principle, yes, everywhere you will see groups of people, communities that are similar to what we call here in the Middle East Bedouins, okay? Bedouin is a phrase that we use in the Arab Peninsula and the Middle East, basically. Like I said, in South Africa they have a different name. In Turkey they also have shepherding communities. They have a different name for them. In Europe they have gypsies. They're in some sense close to a Bedouin community in some sense, not full, because I think gypsies are maybe the last true nomadic group of people, since they don't have this attachment to land at all. So they keep moving and they don't care to go back to the same area they started with. So they don't have. So maybe in that, if you go to the nomadic definition, gypsies will probably be the truest nomadic version of a group of people. So yeah, Bedouins all over. And we're not talking about indigenous in that sense. So we're not talking about indigenous people. We're talking about shepherding communities. They are all over the place. They're in Scotland. They have shepherding communities too on top of mountains. But also they have their own culture and they have their own ways of life and so on.
Do Bedouins only marry Bedouins?
No, they're open to the Palestinian community. It's funny. Okay, my dad did not marry a Bedouin. I did not marry a Bedouin. But, they prefer to have a Bedouin wife. They prefer, okay. Although now we are part of the Palestinian greater community or society. So we're not in the sense of cultural or social interchange, we're not isolated. We are part of this society. We're marginalized in different ways, but not in the social aspect of marginalization. We marry, they marry from us. I mean, it's normal to, but a Bedouin takes his ancestry as very dear to him and very precious. So yeah, you would want to marry someone from a tribe that's known and her parents are known and so on. Yeah, you probably want that, okay. But if you marry outside of the tribe, no, it's very normal now. I mean, it's before maybe 100 years it was a problem. Now it's not. No.
In the Bedouins, are they all one religion, or are they many different religions?
In Palestine, they're mainly Muslim. In Palestine, we accounted for We recorded two small Bedouin families that are Christian. In Jordan, on the other hand, they have a huge Christian Bedouin community. Okay, in Syria you'll see also a Christian Bedouin community. In Palestine, they're very few. There are not many of them. I mean, Christian Bedouins. But yes, Bedouins could be any. They could be Jewish. I mean, in Yemen there are Jewish Bedouins. So yes, to be a Bedouin, you can be any religion. Doesn't matter. But it's as you know, we are in the Middle East and the majority are Muslims. Then that kind of also applies to the Bedouin communities. The majorities are Muslim.
Now, Abraham from the Bible, was he Bedouin?
This is a strong question. I don't think he's a Bedouin. From what I read about him, I don't think he's a Bedouin. He did move around, and he did. Okay, so let's put this so you understand what a Bedouin is. So a farmer can raise sheep, okay, and a Bedouin will raise sheep, okay. That does not make a farmer a Bedouin. If you follow the same economic model as a Bedouin, you're raising cattle or sheep. That does not make you a Bedouin. In that context, okay, you share with the Bedouin that economic part of life, okay. The Bedouin culture is totally different. The Bedouin culture is, we're talking about something thousands of years old. There are codes of guest, codes of honor, codes of generosity, codes of many codes, okay. A normal shepherd will not have them, okay. So you're talking about a shepherding community since 5,000, 10,000 years ago. They shepherd. This is only what they did, and that affected their core cultural aspects. So the way they think, the way they see the other people. And when you talk about farming communities or culture, that's also based on 5,000 or many thousands of years of farming culture that already had its stamp on their cultural beliefs and the way they approach things and they see things. Maybe Abraham is a Bedouin. I'm not sure if that. I cannot tell from the biblical or the religious writing. Some say he's a Bedouin. Some say he's not. He's a farmer that raised sheep. He could be both. In his time, I don't think it was distinguished, a clear distinction between Bedouins and farmers. Maybe they lived together, I guess. I don't know. Some, from what I read, some Israeli tribes were, some, not all, were Bedouin tribes, okay? True Bedouin tribes. That's what they did. And we have records of that. Not all the Israeli clans were Bedouin clans. Not all of them. Some had more sophisticated culture and more urban style life. So they were not all Bedouins. Maybe one or two were, I think. Now this is from what I read. This is just general knowledge. So I could be wrong on that. You're asking me questions about religion that I'm not the expert on that. Okay. But yeah, some claim Abraham is a Bedouin. Some see him as a peasant. Some see him between both. He shared both cultures. So he were a peasant and a Bedouin, a shepherd at the same time. Well, yeah, it's up to you. It's how you read history and how you understand it.
What sort of projects do you do in Bedouins Without Borders?
Okay, so we have three major departments. One is the documentation department. And there we try to build a controlled database on Bedouin tribes in the area, their connecting, their culture, their needs. It's a thorough department that tried to capture all because we truly, when we started in 2015, we did not find any data on Bedouin communities and Bedouin necessities in the West Bank, Gaza, and Naqab. Nothing. And even when we talked to back then with the Palestinian Bureau of Statistics, they said we don't have a definition. They did not have a Bedouin category. So we could not tell, we could not use their database even to try to build some sense of what's going on with Bedouin communities in the West Bank. Since, the Palestinian government itself did not have this category built in 2015. Now they're paying more attention to it. So hopefully in the future, next census we'll see some data on Bedouin, demography and breakdown situation. Okay, what we try to do in Bedouins Without Borders is build our own database since there is none available, and we try to collect data. We have Al-Fursan program. The Fursan program is basically we train Bedouin youth, male and female youth from each geographic area, to do surveys and document and report and take pictures. We give them some skills and some talents, and then they become the eyes and ears and maybe the connection between their communities and the rest of the world through professional reporting and representation. We're around 100 members right now, 50 males and 50 females. And we just started now getting feedback from them, and hopefully, the COVID-19 pandemic just kind of had its toll on all of us. So the things started, we had a very, very slow start since we could not communicate and connect to people. But hopefully next year we'll have the first comprehensive Bedouin report about Bedouins in the area that will answer a lot of questions. A lot of people who, where, when, what's happening. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But they should be answered. They have to be answered in a statistical and comprehensive way, not an assumption or an observation. Also, although that they're valid ways of research, but we should build a more concrete knowledge base that will help us and help other stakeholders in the area, the donor communities or the government and so on, to understand, to reach out to these marginalized communities, to understand what they need, to understand the culture, who they are. There's a lot of questions, like I said, that hopefully next year when we issue the first report, will answer many questions. Which areas are under the demolition threat, which areas are being forced transfers, and so on.
Now you have a program called Guardians of the Desert. What's that?
The Guardians of the Desert is an eco-tourism initiative. It's a mean to financially empower Bedouin youth in the desert communities, Bedouin communities, through the use or through the benefiting of ecotourism. We started in 2017, and last year we were funded by UNDP to establish the first trail, desert trail for the Bedouin communities. And we established one between the monastery of Marsaba to the Maqam of Nabi Musa in Jericho. We liked it because it connected the church to the mosque, and which was had its symbolism, I guess, to us. Anyway, so basically what we do in the organization through the Guardians program, we raise capacity, we build capacity for the youth on guiding techniques and tools and how it's done, maybe some language courses. We're trying to basically start or set up a tourism field or category. It's called desert tourism in Palestine. We don't have that. We have religious tourism, which is common and it's all over the place. And we have some ecological or environmental tourism in some villages in the north. But we don't have anything focused on desert tourism. So we started that a couple of years ago. And hopefully with the support of whether the government or the organizations, local and international organizations, we will continue this, and hopefully it will be realized as one of the contributing financial sources to the economy, to the Palestinian economy. It's important to see it that way. We have a lot of potential. The desert is a beautiful place. A lot of communities there, they don't have jobs, and this is another way of reaching out. And we're building jobs for them where they live, and that's very important, instead of moving them towards city as was intended for them before. So the Guardians, basically a group of Bedouin males and female youth that will take you on a journey to the Palestinian desert and tell you a lot more about Bedouin culture and Bedouin experience. You can also, through our website, read more about them. We also have another youth initiative called Bedouin Folk Bands, and it's basically to keep alive the Bedouin chanting and music and poetry and so on. So yes, that's also another initiative that's attracting a lot of Bedouin youth as we speak.
So what you want to do is bring people from abroad and give them experience of living a life in a tent for a few weeks, like a Bedouin would live, and teach them all the customs and habits and everything?
Yes. That's one of the packages we do. If you go to the website, you'll see that there are, under the Bedouin initiative, there's many tourism packages in different districts, different governorates, and they have different programs, okay? But we have an initiative called Live as a Bedouin, and yes, that's where people would come. And now it depends how strong you want this experience to be. Some will do a day or two. Some will do just shepherding experience. We provide that. Guardians will take you, will pick you up, explain to you, guide you through this, and explain to you a lot of the Bedouin, the story in the area. Like I said, like you said, you can get a chance to live like one. and you will get a chance to also enjoy the desert, because the desert has also other benefits. There's a lot of meditation, soul meditation, spirit meditation in the desert. A lot of, you talked about Abraham, and you talked about a lot of prophets came from the desert. That's where things start, I guess. It's the desert, everything starts there. And you spend the night there, and you'll see it's mind-opening for me, for a lot of things. Bedouins, we say, when someone asks a Bedouin why you don't have a roof on your house, and he say, why don't you build a traditional house? I said, well, a traditional house has a roof, and when you sleep, when you look up, you will see the roof. But when I sleep, I see the stars. Okay, so it's that way of thinking, and yeah, the desert will give you that space. So yeah, I encourage people to join, sign up in the future, and contribute to this initiative and enjoy the experience.
Now, it's 2020 and technology is a big thing today. Is it important to teach the traditions to the younger generation?
Of course it is. For us, the transfer of culture is essential. Our parents are doing it. We have this strong tie to the culture, like I said before. So yes, as a tribal community, we still have this strong bonds. Okay, it's not now with technology. It has its toll on us. It's affecting the way we communicate, because we have something called the shig. The shig is the place in the Beit al-Shar, in the tent. That's the place where all the men and women, but separately, not together, of course, all the men would gather after a long day of work, or in Ramadan when they're breaking their fast, or when there's an event, or there's a problem that they need to discuss. The shig is the meeting area, the round table, as you say in England, I guess you say it. Okay, it's that round table area where all the members of the clan sit together, on daily routine, discuss their day, what they will do for the future, connect together. So the shig is a great contributor to the culture. This is how we met and how we ate together. So each man will bring some food from his house, and we'll sit down, and all men will eat together. Okay, women will do the same thing in the women shig, or the women part of the shig. This is how the tribe itself connected very strong to each other. Nowadays we don't have that. This is fading away, and it's technology, I guess, is a big contributor to that. And so now we connect through Facebook or Messenger and so on. But yeah, so we're losing that, I think. And a lot of interviews we did with elders and mid-age Bedouins, that affected us deeply, because when we talk about the shig and its resemblance to the Bedouin communities, a lot of people will cry. Okay, you'll see a tear here and there, because it's who we are. It was connecting us. It wasn't before Facebook and before all that. This is how we connected. This is the area where we become one. And now, it's fading away, and yeah, it's due to technology. Another technological effect, I talk forever about technology and how it affected the whole community, not only Bedouins, but let's stick to Bedouins. Tribal law. Now you'll read things on the net, people are attacking law, or the common law, or saying this tribal law is bad, and we need to go to the civil law, and so on. And a lot of people are not understanding. The people write things on social media without knowledge, and without true understanding of what they're speaking about. And that also is giving a bad name or a bad reputation to Bedouins and Bedouin culture, and why Bedouins do this or do that. And if you don't understand the background, and a lot of the news is not right, but with the true understanding, then you'll know why things are done this way. So social media in general has its positive, little positive, and Bedouin culture, and a lot of negative impact on Bedouin culture. You have to keep in mind, we are an oral culture. We like to talk. We are into we learn from storytelling and from knowledge based orally, from father to son and so on, to grandson. And when we don't talk and we don't sit in the gatherings, some of this wisdom and knowledge will be lost. Eventually it'll be lost. And that's a threat too that we see and should be remedied in the close future.
What's your prayer for the future of the organization?
Well, it's to do what it's supposed to do, help the Bedouin communities. Like I said, be a platform for them to represent themselves and to be heard. Hopefully we'll do some change. There's no society or community that's fully perfect. We know we have issues and problems that we need to fix and change, as the human society is changing. But we need to hold on to what's positive, strengthen that, press on that, and deal with what's negative and try to fix it. Okay, and that's mainly. And make sure that Bedouin voices are heard. That's my hope for Bedouins.Buddhas, is to amplify the needs and the voices of these marginalized communities all over the historical Palestine or Palestine and Israel area. Because when you're a Bedouin, if you're in Gaza or you're in Negev or you're in West Bank, it's the same. The situation is the same. You're forced transferred, you're pressured to move, your way of life is not accepted, is threatened, your culture is threatened, economy is threatened. So it doesn't matter if you're a Bedouin that resides in Israel or you're a Bedouin that resides under the Palestinian Authority, whether in C or B, or it doesn't matter what classification of area you live in. You're a Bedouin, you will face the same pressures and the same problems. Maybe the color of the problem might be a little different, or or the strength of it, or how powerful the people are implementing it. But it's the same thing. The whole aspect of Bedouins in Palestine, or the Bedouin as culture and as a human society, are under threat as we speak now. And hopefully, we at Bedouins Without Borders will try to help and maybe stop this, I guess, immediate or future threat, and save what we can.
What's your website for people who'd like to know more?
It's www.thebedouin.org.
Okay, Wissam, thank you very much.
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. And hopefully you'll visit the Bedouin community and learn from them, I guess. Sure.